sales is the most lucrative skill in the world, period. The problem is most sales advice out there today is outdated, cheesy, and can even keep you from getting the deals that can make all the difference in your career. This is the No BS Sales School, a podcast for entrepreneurs and salespeople who want to master the skill of selling without all the BS. Listen, if you're like me, you hate doing admin crap. Number one, because you're not good at it. And number two, because you know it's taking you away from the stuff that actually makes you money. So why are you doing it? Do what I did. Go to worksby.com right now and let them pair you with a real executive assistant. Once I started working with Cheryl at Worksby, my income went up 40% in 1 month, and my working hours went from 70 down to 40. It's a game changer. Go to worksby.com right now, book a call, and tell them Walker sent you. If you do, you'll get 2 extra hours of service for free as a bonus. So if you're ready to finally stop doing the stuff you hate and focus on the stuff that makes you money, go to worksby.com right now. That's WORXBEE.com. Tell them Walker sent you, and you'll get those 2 free hours.
Welcome to the WS Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Walker McKay. Today, I'm super excited to have as my guest a good friend of mine, Jordana Zeldin. She's a sales coach, and she's founder and CEO of Spring Training, which is a coaching consultancy. And this is cool. She works with individuals and sales teams to make them feel better when they're selling, and it makes their prospects feel better, and it sure as hell makes your revenue better. And Jordana is here to tell us how to do that, right? How to be more human in our processes, in our sales situation. So that's why I want you to listen. Jordana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Walker. So glad to be
Man,
here. Great
I'm
summary
so
of what this is.
Thank you very much. Sometimes I can pull it off and it works
It was
fine.
good.
So Jordana lives in the beautiful Hudson Valley in New York, correct?
Correct. Yeah, after 15 years of being in the city. Yep. Moved up here.
So she finally moved to the right place, got the hell out of town. Take 2 minutes and tell us how you got to where you are in your career. What's your story?
Well, the story is that I never in a million years imagined I would be in sales. I came up in the art world.
Truth.
I was directing theater. I was running an arts nonprofit. And I found my way to sales by way of a venture-backed art technology startup.
Venture-backed art technology. What the hell does that mean?
So that just means they had a lot of money and they're still around, but their mission was to make all of the world's art accessible to anyone with an internet connection. So that meant allowing gallerists and artists to show their work online and connect with collectors who would buy it around the world. And they needed a sales.
Cool.
They needed a sales team.
And you lost the bet.
Well, this was one of the buzziest companies in the art world, and I was just so excited to do anything at this company. But I really tripped and fell into selling, and I felt very uncomfortable with it for the first year and a half. I, like so many of us early on, was carrying around.
What made you feel uncomfortable? What was it about selling made you uncomfortable?
Well, all the baggage, the used car salesman, Wolf of Wall Street, Glengarry Glen Ross, right? All of the ideas that selling is deceptive, manipulative, crafty. So, I'd go into work and I would kind of leave myself at the door and do the best version of seller me that I could. It didn't feel fun. I did okay, not great. But then the real turning point, I'd say, came when we finally got a pretty seasoned head of sales on board who delivered the kind of radical idea that, in fact, the people we really were, flawed, vulnerable, silly, imperfect, us were the very people who belonged in our selling. And it was like right messenger, right message, right time. I dropped the mask and everything changed.
Isn't that great that he had the wisdom to come up with that? There's so few people, especially in corporate, that get that, right? That you got to bring your real self.
He was like 24 years old too, which was so crazy. This was like a deeply emotionally intelligent and wise young man in sales, and everything changed. And I started to love my work. I started to have fun in my work. I was more connected to myself, more connected to my prospects. My numbers soared. I became the top performer on the team. And I naturally gravitated towards coaching and training other people. I wanted to empower them in the way that he had me. And I started to feel like experiencing the wins of the folks I was coaching was more satisfying than my own wins. And that's when I decided I wanted to do this coaching thing for real, full time.
So when you were selling, and this wonder kid with high emotional intelligence said, "Hey, just be yourself, be vulnerable, be your weird self." What was the first thing when you felt free to do that? What was the first thing you changed?
Like my voice. I mean, it's so funny, but like, because we were selling into gallerists and the art world can be a kind of snooty and elitist place, like I felt the need to be so formal. And I also felt like I was in some way in a like subservient position. So I was like, well, if you have any questions, just let me. I mean, I had no sense of my own power in in the dynamic and in the relationship. And when I brought my confidence, my know-how, my own like, I don't know, energy or whatever, it changed. Like suddenly I had needs from my prospects and I had expectations and I set the timeline and I made sure that we agreed upon next steps. And that changed everything.
You're not apologizing to anybody about that. You are the same, right? At the same level, equal business stature, for God's sake. And that's so hard for some people to get.
Yes. And what was so amazing too is the realization that, okay, maybe I didn't know the ins and outs of their business as well as they did, but I sure as hell knew so much more about how to get the kind of virtual exposure that they needed online to transform their business. And that was what I could offer them. And that was powerful. And I became a trusted advisor, the thing that we all kind of try to be in sales.
We aspire to be. And so you got your voice. So and that meant to you at the time that you could, again, what we talk about, equal business stature. What else changed?
Well, what's funny, actually, Walker, and kind of surprising, is it changed how I felt in my life. I mean, we spent so much time at work, 8 hours a day or whatever. And the fact that I was myself at home, in work, the way that I was with my friends, my family, with my prospects, I just started to feel better and more fulfilled and more excited about life. And that's a big, that's a big part of what I like to, encourage and clients and sellers. And that I talk about even on LinkedIn. It's like when you come home to yourself in your work, the impact on your life is profound as well.
So, how many other people on your team were as quick to grasp it as you were? Or was that such a foreign concept so people couldn't get rid of it? Couldn't buy into it?
Well, we all had a lot more fun. And I think everyone to varying degrees was trying on which parts of themselves they wanted to bring to their conversations. Right. And I was like, I'm going to bring all of myself and see what happens.
The whole weird package.
All of it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, once I figured out, like, I love the sales coaching thing, I needed to find out how to do it. And I online actually found a job listing for a full-time sales coach at an amazing training and coaching organization called Sales Gym. And they were working with, AT&T and Discovery and Lego Education and all these amazing companies. I joined the team there. And that was where I really got my sea legs and my at bats, my coaching at bats. Working with some sellers at, the world's top organizations. And it's also where I learned firsthand, because they had a very interesting methodology there that's rooted in the idea that if sellers deliberately practice their craft in the way that athletes and performers do, the impact can be transformative. So a lot of our sessions were spent, yes, there was the concept and the skills and they did the pre-work, but then the coaching was a kind of deliberate
100%. Yeah. You got to get in there and you got to be able to work it in your own head. You got to be able to make it come out of your mouth, practice situations, and you need somebody there who can help you kind of see beyond you, help you get out of your own head. Right?
Absolutely. Because what's so crazy about our industry is that our practice usually happens when the stakes are the highest, in front of our prospects, where we have everything to lose. So this was about creating a space and a time for sellers to figure this stuff out loud with the support of a coach, so that when it came time to get on the phone with their prospects, they'd done it. They were like ready for game time.
Yeah. So when you went to go work for this coaching organization, were their beliefs the same as yours? They just had them packaged?
You know,
or how did that work?
well, so what's interesting is that they didn't talk about humanity, in the way that I talk about humanity or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I noticed as I was learning the skills and the way that they were teaching them, from delivering their, your agenda to how you conduct discovery, all of these things, I started to make connections that the reason that this approach was resonating with me so much was because these skills were in some ways teaching sellers to meet really fundamental human needs at every moment in the sales conversation.
I love that. Tell me what you mean.
Well, yeah, good, great question. So, for example, when you deliver an agenda, right? Your agenda can be simply about what you're going to talk about, and that's fine. But there are also a lot of opportunities there in your agenda to signal that this is going to be a collaborative dialogue. And we can talk about tactically what this looks like, right?
Yep.
That you're genuinely interested in where your prospect is at, what their circumstances are, to make them feel seen and heard. And then you want to ask them at the end of your agenda, what do you want to make sure we talk about? Or what's the most important thing that you want to come away from our time with together? Again, to
Yes.
show them that this is going to be a meeting of and for their needs.
Yes. This is not a me come bark at you
No.
and do my dog and pony show and then hold your questions till the end. Bullshit, right? We're not doing that.
And so Sales Jim wasn't talking about that as meeting fundamental human needs, but I was able to kind of distill, like, oh, that's what's happening here. And this is one of the reasons it's so exciting to me.
So what's the fundamental human need that's being met there?
So good question. So one, I would say really important is being seen and heard, the feeling of being seen and heard, which people want more than just about anything.
Yes, they do.
The other really important fundamental need that we underestimate in an agenda is feeling safe.
So how does giving them an agenda make them feel safe?
I want to ask you, how do you think it might make someone feel safe, Walker?
She's a damn good sales coach. You see? So what happens is, so I equate this, I do the same thing, right? I teach people, and there's a simple formula. I ask time, agenda, decision, biggest fear. First thing, ask the prospect, how much time do you have?
Great.
And or get confirmed there, right? I'm valuing your time. What is it you want to make sure we talk about today to make this a good use of your time?
Great.
And I'll repeat that back. And then what they say, and then I'll say, here's what I want to cover. Are you okay if I ask you about these things, right? I want to know where you are now versus where you want to be. I want to find out how that might impact your revenues and your budget. And then I want to find out how you're making a decision. Are you okay if we talk about that stuff? And then I get permission to tell them, listen, if I get the feeling I can't help you, I'm going to tell you so. Do you mind doing the same for me? If for whatever reason you're not interested in this, do you mind telling me no too? And I want to give them permission that this is a real conversation. I feel no pressure to sell you anything.
Beautiful.
And then we decide, let's pretend it's the end of the meeting. And you're thinking, Walker, you've got something I need. And I'm thinking, I've got something I can really help you. And this makes sense. What do you see happening next? I'm going to ask them at the beginning, what is it they're hoping to decide today? And if I need to make a suggestion, then we make a suggestion about what we're going to decide. And then we can move on with the sales call.
Beautiful. And it's fun, that piece of like, and if you don't feel like this is right for you and vice versa, can we be straight with each other? I teach that too. And it's part of a framework with the acronym DISARM. And that's the R, and that is real talk. So I love that. Real talk. Yeah. So Walker, I mean, so we're very much aligned in how we think about our agenda. So to your mind, what would you say why would someone feel safe participating and hearing that agenda?
So let me tell you a story why I believe this. So pretend you were going to the dentist for the first time in your life and you're 45 years old and you got tooth problems, right? You're not a city person. You come in, somebody's making you go to the dentist and you're scared. And so you come in the office, you're nervous, you go sit in the chair, and all of a sudden some dude with a mask comes at you with the needle aiming at your face. What do? Right. Most people are not comfortable with salespeople because they're afraid they're going to get tricked. They're afraid they're going to have their time wasted. And so what I want to do is lay it out up front and say, it's like the dentist. Glad you're here. I know this must be a weird environment. I've got to do some work, but I'm not going to hurt you. I got to put a mask over so neither you nor I are going to be infected. And I've got to put, of course, everybody's wearing a damn mask these days. Yeah. And I've got to give you a shot in the roof of your mouth. The needle's going to look like the it's going to look like the barrel of a shotgun. It's going to look so big. It's really not. But then I'm going to poke you in the top of your mouth, and people say it pinches. It hurts like hell for about 2 seconds. Just know that's going to happen. But then it'll allow me to do the work on your teeth. And so at that point, when the dentist puts his mask on and comes out with the needle, I go, okay, I know what's prepared. I know what to prepare for.
There we
Always
go.
want to know, if we can know what's going to happen next, there's nothing to be afraid of.
That's it. That is why
Ta-da!
an agenda.
Is that the right answer?
That's ding, ding,
Hey,
ding, ding.
I win.
That is why an agenda delivered in the way that we're talking about, where it's not just a lecture or a law, right? It's a fluid, collaborative conversation, makes people feel safe. And that is a fundamental human need. And that is something we need to be, keeping a kind of a check on at every point along the sales conversation.
I think, yes. And I think another on top of that is the need to be understood.
Absolutely. No
the need
question.
to be understood and not. So I went into a clothing store the other day and I went to this place where I buy clothes on a regular basis. And there was a new person in there. I went to, new person in there whom I didn't know. And I looked at something. She goes, "Oh, that would be perfect for you." And then I went somebody goes, "Oh, you're going to love that." Or no. And I'm like, you don't even freaking know me. How do you know that? I picked it up because it was ugly. Now I know I can't trust you.
Right. Yes. And, that even just connected to the agenda, it's like oftentimes you'll hear people listing out their agenda items and they'll say something like, so, we want to hear about you and your circumstances. Then from there, we'll tell you about us and how we work. And it's like, no. Tell them that based on everything you hear from them, you are going to try to speak very specifically about some of the ways that you can help meet their needs, right? It's like, that is the art of what, an agenda can be nothing or it can be so much. And what we're talking about here is showing that desire to understand and then letting them know that the conversation will be tailored around where they're at and what they want.
And by the way, nobody gives a shit how long you've been in business. Nobody cares how long you've been in business. They don't care. And I find so many people have to say, "Oh, we've been in business 35 years and and here's our history." Nobody gives a shit. Put it on your website. Nobody's gonna read it anyway.
That's an example of showing versus telling. Like, you can tell someone you've been in business for X number of years and show all of the logos that you work with, which carries almost no water.
Yes.
Or you can show them your credibility and your knowledge through the way that you conduct this conversation and the way you bring in relevant insights and do some teaching and all of that stuff. And that is infinitely more powerful than resting on your laurels of the years you've been in business and the logos you do business with.
Blah, blah, blah. Because you could have been an idiot. You could have been an idiot for 35 years.
Who knows?
Right? I tell people, maybe you've been in business for 10 years, but that doesn't mean you have 10 years experience. You might have 1 year experience 10 times.
Right.
That you haven't learned a damn thing since you've been in there, right? Quit bragging about that.
That's right.
So, yeah. And so I think too, and I think you're getting here as well, when we're having these sales calls, we're asking questions, got to ask questions, got to ask the right questions. I think that's even the wrong statement, is that we got to figure out what it is we're trying to learn. And what I want to learn and what I want my clients to learn is, what are my prospects' opinions about things? Not just the data. It's not just, what's your revenue? It's $5 million. Is that good? What do you think about that?
How do you feel? What you're saying is, how do you feel? Yes.
How do you feel about that? That's exactly right. Because if the revenues are $5 million and the guy's like, shit, this is great, ain't no reason to mess with that.
Right.
But I want to ask him his opinions. I don't want to share my own. I want to learn what he thinks. He doesn't give a shit, but I think, think the same thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting. I think this idea of, because here's where it comes back to this concept of safety too. It's like, buying can be inherently a little scary because buying often represents change. Then there's this reality of, in a selling conversation, having to open up to a perfect stranger about all of your problems at your organization, when that stranger is financially invested in being the solution for your problems. That's a kind of scary environment. So I think that we, at each step along the way, really need to be making sure that we're making the buying process less scary. And even, like, for example, I have a client who's she is developing a diversity and inclusion consultancy. And this is an area where, of course, everyone is now, or many organizations are now, newly aware of DEI. They know they have to do something about it, but they don't really feel like they have the language or the comfort or the familiarity to talk about it in a way that, like, where they're going to get it right, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so part of what she and I have been working on in her discovery is in sending out those signals like of non-judgment and safety so that they feel comfortable opening up about what's really going on in the organization. So for example, starting off the conversation with, look, DEI is something so many companies are thinking of. And some folks that I talk to, they're really they know it, they've been steeped in it. And others are just getting their feet wet. Like, where are you here? Right.
Yeah.
And providing them, where do you fall? Giving them the option or the ability to raise their hand and say, I'm new here and I'm going to need some help. Right.
Yeah.
And that in itself is really powerful.
I love the concept. And one of the things that I think is that people want to do things that other people like them do.
Yeah.
We got to make them feel comfortable and safe. And so by using what I call, and I think you do too, a third party story.
Yes.
Here's what other people tell me. Some people are way ahead in this thing and they're like, man, we got this down. Thanks for coming by. Other people are like, we really need to get it down, but we're not sure where to even start. Kind of help me. Where are you in that? If the second part is a 1, yes, the other part's a 10, where are you in there? Right.
And laying out those options totally non-judgmentally, right?
Yes.
Where knowing everything is no better than knowing nothing, but we just want to help understand where they're at so that we can best meet their needs so that they come away from the conversation feeling like they got what they came for.
One of the worst visuals people have of salespeople is a buzzard on a wire waiting to jump in and swoop and freaking pick up all the stuff. And we cannot ever look like we're greedy and waiting for this to happen. And you're right, having a real conversation. It doesn't have to look, sound, feel, taste like a sales call. It is a conversation, for God's sake.
Well, it's interesting, that's so right. And what you said about this idea of being like the buzzards, like so many salespeople are waiting for the moment to say the thing they have to say, irrespective of whether or not they understand if their prospect is actually primed to be open to anything they have to say. And like this, for example, goes back to I know before we started recording, we were talking about cold calling, but like, if we can just simply, so, we have our cadences or whatever, we know how many calls we have to make, and this person is next on our dialer list. If we just take a moment to picture them and where they're at and what they're doing and where their headspace is at when they pick up the phone, they are busy. They are not thinking about us. They are probably irritated that it's us, disappointed that it's us. So given all of those things, are they in any psychological or emotional state to buy in that moment?
Hell no.
Hell to the no, right? So our job, and I actually think empathy has a really great place here. And I'm far from the only person who teaches, hi, this is so-and-so. I know I'm calling you out of, but I know I'm calling you completely out of the blue, but I am calling for good reason. Do you mind if I tell you why I'm calling? And if it doesn't feel relevant, you can get right back to it. I am working with a client right now, Walker, that has had, literally, no exaggeration, I would never throw these numbers around if they weren't true, 100% permission to speak rate from that opener. And my belief is that it's because empathy is really, really powerful. And you're both taking a moment to acknowledge not where you're at, where they're at from their perspective. You're calling out of the blue, and then you're giving them the autonomy and the freedom, again, fundamental human need, to let you know it's not relevant and they can get back to what they were working on. Only then. What were you going to say, Walker?
Brilliant.
I mean, and everyone's teaching variations of this or whatever, but it absolutely works. And only then, once they acknowledge, yes, I am open to hearing what it is you have to tell me, do you have a chance of breaking through and, beginning a conversation?
I always picture the average sales guy who in my mind is the enemy. I don't say the enemy, but he's the one that makes the rest of us look bad. Average and below salespeople. And nobody thinks they're an average salespeople. They always say it's like drivers. Did you know that 94% of drivers believe they're over or above average? I think salespeople probably believe the same thing.
Yeah.
But if we can manage people's expectations, do you mind if I take 30 seconds and tell you why I called, and you tell me what our conversation is even relevant? Ask permission, slow down, right? Show. Our job is to interrupt people. You're right about that. But how do we make it okay to interrupt them? How do we make them say, I'm so glad maybe not, I'm glad you interrupted me, but listen, I did 30 seconds. You're not going to bug me again. This is good. Then it makes it so much easier when you call back if you hadn't been a jackass on the phone.
Well, that's
right? It
the
makes it so
thing
much easier to get them
too.
later.
We are planting seeds here with these cold calls. And maybe in that moment, it's not going to be the right moment to talk or the right moment to buy. But the last thing you want to do, and I'm realizing I'm like losing the metaphor. I don't know how you kill a seed, but you want to plant the seed. even if it's not going to grow into a flower or whatever right then and there, so that should you come back in the future, they're not going to have a really lousy association with you, your company, and their experience of you. Exactly.
I think the reality is if you leave a good impression, if you have put no pressure and you've been just able to address people on a human level, I feel like that does leave good soil. However, I think if you leave a bad impression, you are no different than anybody else.
Right.
People have to see that you're different before they can see that you're better. I think they'll remember the good calls where you're actually human and empathetic. Then they do the bad calls because bad calls are normal.
Well, exactly. And that's and I know people talk about like a pattern interrupt, but humanity is in itself a pattern interrupt.
God, isn't that stupid? Us humans being humans is a fucking pattern interrupt.
I know. It's funny, actually. I got a piece of, I got a LinkedIn outreach, a connect request the other day. It was hands down the best connect request I'd ever received. And I made a post about it. So my posts normally get like, a couple thousand views or whatever. 10,000 people have been engaging with what is really just a very human, authentic, and earnest message because it's such a standout. Can I read it to you, Walker?
Please, yes.
It's, "Hi, Jordana. Wanted to introduce myself. Looks like me and you both had the same fear with sales where we didn't tell anyone what we were doing for a while, LOL. Would love the chance to earn your business one day. Thanks in advance."
How about that? What do they sell?
It's a payment processing solution.
Okay. How about
Didn't even talk about it. I was so impressed by how human and just down to earth and non-ASCII he was. I proactively was like, well, what does this guy sell?
Didn't even tell you what. Isn't that amazing, right? Connect as a human first.
10,316 people are seeing and engaging with this post because it is just what we all want more of. And it's so simple, but hard to do. Yeah.
And I wonder how many people of those 10,000 will actually do that.
Well, it's funny. Someone said, oh, wow, earn your business. I'm going to use that. And I wrote to them, I was like, use it only if you mean it.
Right.
Because the second we co-opt some phrase that sounds empathetic and turn it into a tactic, it becomes hollow and loses its efficacy.
Right. You sound right. Bingo. Right on. And why is it so damn hard to be human? I don't understand. Well, Jordana, it's been one of those fun. Yeah, you and I can talk for hours. I love this. Oh my God, there's something here. Can I tell you a couple things I've learned?
Please do.
I love your approach to selling. What you have done is, and we've talked about this, but it's to really humanize. And the way you said, really just to be yourself and bring all your vulnerabilities and all your stuff. I don't know that that's something specifically I've incorporated before, but you're exactly right. And among the things that I love about you is every conversation we've had, every interaction we've had is you've brought your whole self, right? There's nothing, you're not hiding anything. And I just think that's cool as hell. So the more that the No BS sales team can hear that and can just try to be your own dorky self in a sales call and be real and be sincere, the better things will go.
Yeah.
Jordana, you are a freaking star.
It was fun to talk with you.
How would people find you? Because people need to know who you are and where to find you. How do they find
you're wonderful. So LinkedIn, everything happens on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn. It's like /Jordana Zeldin. But I also just launched
Zeldin.
Zeldin. Yeah. So it's JORDANA ZELDIN.
Just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds. I also just launched my website for spring training. It's springtraining.com with 2 I's, but really all the best up-to-date stuff is on LinkedIn. So
great. It's a spring training with 2 I's because we got to put our whole eyes into the situation. Is that correct?
Well, it's actually the eyes are you and your prospect in relationship with one another. So there we go. Come full circle.
Love that. That is freaking awesome. That's awesome. No BS sales team. I hope that you will listen to this podcast twice because there's a lot of good stuff here, and I hope you will share it. If you have not already, please rate and review this, but do share it with someone else that needs to hear it. I've been hearing from a lot of you guys wanting help with coaching. You said you've never had a coach before. You're not even sure how to do this, not sure if it's the right thing. I totally get it. Not the right fit for everybody, but if you want to have a real no BS conversation with me, I'm open to that. Email me, walker@walkermckay.com. Go to my website, walkermckay.com. I did that myself. What a marketing genius. Thank you. I look forward to talking to you again. Please, if you've learned something here today, send me an email. Let me know what that is. Or even better, post it on LinkedIn with a link to this show. That would be the best. Thank you, guys. Jordana, you are awesome. And I've loved this conversation like I've every conversation I've had with you. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.